Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB All-America podcast. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, lead college football writer at sportingnews.com. Bill, week 3 is upon us. Can we get more excitement than we had in week 2? It's going to be difficult.
No, there's the schedule. Every time. So we had an old editor once. I had one when I was coming up through the ranks, and he said, "Never say that the week is terrible." But this is a bad schedule. So you can't say it, because when you say it like last week, you get 17-point underdogs winning games. And, I will admit the big matchup of the week, Miami at Texas A&M, you want to see the Aggies undefeated here, but that's not how it works. They lose to App State. Now it becomes a desperation game of sorts for the Aggies. So, that's one. Michigan State, Washington's very intriguing to me. But by and large, it's just this one of those kind of weeks. Let's get it to conference play, basically, right? Because most teams are playing their third non-con game this week.
Yes, and a reminder to our listeners, if there is some sort of crazy upset, crazy play, crazy situation happening, Bill and I will hop on a Twitter for a Twitter Spaces, a Sporting News Twitter Spaces. We broke down the wild Texas-Alabama game, the finish, the crazy fourth quarter last Saturday. Had a lot of people listening in. That was a lot of fun. So we will be on standby Saturday, since we don't have like a marquee game. The Miami-Texas A&M game doesn't kick off until 9 o'clock. So the finish of that one will be post-midnight. Not sure we're going to jump on at post-midnight, but if there is if Notre Dame goes down to 0-3 against Cal, we may have to hop on mid-afternoon for that one. Bill, let's start with the game that we have referenced, Miami at Texas A&M, 9 o'clock kickoff on Saturday night, ESPN game. The pressure starting to build a little bit on Jimbo. Everyone has pointed out 2020, they had that one loss and they had a great season, finished number 5. Every other year he's been in College Station, 4 losses. I saw this stat floating around through 50 games. Kevin Sumlin had a better record at Texas A&M than Jimbo Fisher, and they both had a win against Alabama. Sumlin, of course, lasted 77 games before he was let go. What are your thoughts on A&M and the pressure on them to bounce back from their loss to Appalachian State last week?
Yeah, it was a bad loss. It really was. Just having that happen in that environment, letting App State play keep away, scheduling App State in the first place. That's my rant. I already had that rant. Don't schedule App State if you're a Power 5 athletic director, unless you want. Here's what you're volunteering for when you're saying, hey, Sean Clark, come on down. You're volunteering this. You're going to drive your fans crazy, because they're going to look at that and be like, why are we playing them? 2, you're going to be in for a close game, because the last 6 times App has played a Power 5 opponent, it's been 7 points or less. And 3, you might lose. North Carolina could have lost. South Carolina did lose. Michigan knows how it feels. So Texas A&M and Michigan are you just don't do it. Don't schedule them. They are. I'll ask you this question. It's interesting to me, not to get too far off topic, but who is App State if it was a basketball tournament? Is it Butler? Is it Gonzaga? I think they're like the Butler of college football. I don't want to play them.
That's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, but that's okay. That's A&M's problem this week. They're still probably going to talk about App State, and now they're playing Miami, who's a very good team with a very good quarterback and a very efficient offense under Mario Cristobal that's going to come into College Station and not be afraid. So I think the biggest thing, and I don't know if you noticed this, Texas A&M's got to get their offense going. That's what do they need to do, Bill, to get their offense going?
How do you not notice that?
Right.
They lost 17-14. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown. They had their offense with Haynes King at quarterback scored 1 touchdown against a defense that gave up 63 points the week before. How do you explain that?
Right. It was miserable, and they didn't convert third downs. Their quarterback play was rough. They're not getting the ball in the hands of their receivers. So there's a long checklist. That's why I think in this game early, whether it's Smith or Evan Stewart, that they get the ball in the hands of their playmakers, whether it's a reverse or a trick play, and you get that crowd into the game early. I know that's like a cliche, but as a qualified youth football offensive play caller, that's what I would do. I would do something fun early to get the crowd into it, because that crowd's been, what have they been doing? They've been moaning and complaining all week. But do something like that, and then you go from there and try to get out early on the Hurricanes, who, again, it's not a great matchup for A&M at all. I mean, you've got a pretty good quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke on the other side that doesn't turn the ball over, and he's completing over 70% of his passes right now.
And when do you go to Max Johnson? Like, when do he's got experience, and clearly Haynes King is not moving that offense right now. I mean, I'm guessing he's on a short leash this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. And Max Johnson has experience in the SEC, like you said, a winner at LSU. There'll be boo birds out if Haynes King struggles early. So, getting the running game going. Texas A&M shouldn't be averaging less than 4 yards a carry. I mean, and there's a lot of people dogging Jimbo's offense right now. And does Jimbo's offense work? And that was going on since Florida State after Jameis left. A lot of people have picked on his quarterback play ever since. So it's a long checklist for the Aggies. And to think that they could go from number 6 in the country and play in Alabama in October 8 in like the game of the year, which I wrote that is the game of the year, given the offseason back and forth, to there's a scenario where they could be 1-3. They could lose to Miami, turn around, lose to Arkansas next month or next week, and then you're going to Alabama with like a 2-3 record. Good luck with that. So yeah, it's a really tough spot to be in if you're an Aggies fan.
On the other side, Miami, we don't really know what to expect. They played two kind of inferior opponents, pulled away kind of late in their second game, but were never threatened. Looked terrific in the first game of the season against, I think it was Bethune-Cookman, put up 70. You've done some research on the Canes, Tyler Van Dyke, Mel Kiper's. I read some good story on ESPN today by David Hale. Mel Kiper was quoted in there, said, he's got him as his number 3 quarterback right now, but he's only started about 9 games. He needs some more experience. These are showcase games, and Kiper, along with a lot of NFL scouts, will be watching closely on Saturday night.
They have Josh Gaddis as the offensive coordinator, and I bet Josh Gaddis, if he talked about, has to be in love with what he has down there at Miami, because he has a good quarterback and he has a lot of players that can make plays. He always talks about speed and space, and that's what they do. They average 9 yards a play. And I know the competition is what it is, but when you have 2 good backs like Henry Parrish, Thaddeus Franklin, you got good receivers around Tyler Van Dyke and a good offensive line, and you can start getting 9 yards per play. It's kind of like, this is what we've been waiting for with Miami, is that super explosive offense. Now, can they go into a road venue and do it? That isn't a road venue, like, with all due respect to Florida State and North Carolina and Pitt. When A&M's rocking, it's really tough to play there. So we'll see if Miami can go in there and do that. So yeah, it is, to me, this game for some reason is less about A&M and more about Miami. Because Jimbo, people are going to complain about him no matter what. But if Miami wins this game, I'm going to be impressed with them. I'm going to think they're probably a top 10 team, and maybe they create something real that we can watch in a couple months when they go to Clemson.
Yeah, I think the early part of this game will be important. If A&M feels like, here we go again. If there's 100,000 people, you can feel the tension. If it's 7-0, if it's 10-0, and oh goodness, what is happening? Was App State not just a fluke? And then the pressure starts to build.
Right. And it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a tight game. Are we supposed to pick these, or do we wait?
If it's one of your 4, we can wait. A&M is 5-point favorite. It's not one of my 4.
It's not one of my 4. So
I would probably take Miami. I just can't get the vision out of my head. I watched a lot of that App State game, and they just couldn't do anything on offense.
I got Miami winning outright in a close one. I think it's going to be a lot of, but because A&M's got their back against the wall and is desperate, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to feel like one of those really good bowl games. I think I put 30-27 as the score. Definitely like the Canes to cover, but we'll go from there.
One thing, it was the infamous Miami Cotton Bowl, misbehavior back in the day when the U was the U, Michael Irvin and all that. That was against Texas A&M, was it not?
I thought it was Texas that they had like the billion yards in penalties, but they
yeah.
So they haven't played often, but I looked it up. The home and home, they did a home and home, and like I got it right here. 2007, 2008, Miami swept a home and home. So it's one of those matchups that I feel like has happened more than it has. And I kind of like it. It'll be cool to see the uniforms up against each other. And could be worse. Could be watching something worse at 9 p.m. on a Saturday.
No, that'll be good. Another good night game to keep an eye on, though. Michigan State at Washington. Washington, a 1-point favorite. A little surprised by that. Games on ABC. Washington really struggled last year, 4-8. They only averaged 21 points, 21.5 points per game. They've scored 45 and 52, thanks to, in part, Indiana transfer Michael Penix taking over a quarterback. He's healthy through 2 games, but obviously competition has not been stiff with Kent State and Portland State. Tell me what you think we'll see Saturday out of this game. Michigan State going on the road for the first time. It should be a fun one.
Here's a couple fun facts about this game before we even get to the actual game. So these two haven't played since 97 when Washington won the Aloha Bowl. Remember the Aloha Bowl? Nick Saban was Michigan State's coach at the time.
I went to that game.
Was that in Hawaii?
I kid you not. I was at that Aloha Bowl.
What were you doing at the night? Forget the game. I want to hear this story.
I was covering Vanderbilt basketball, and we were out there for the Rainbow Classic, which is, the Maui's in November. The Rainbow Classic, which is now called something else, was the basketball tournament over Christmas. So we flew out there, and Christmas Day, there were no basketball games. We went to the game. We were eating hot dogs, was our Christmas Day dinner. In the stands, Washington, Nick Saban and Michigan State take on Washington. Had a ball. It was my first bowl game that I had attended in person, and happened to be in
That's
Honolulu.
amazing. Very cool. It does. It says Christmas Day, 1997. So that is dead on. Now, I'm guessing you weren't at Cal on October 5th, 1957, which is the last time Michigan State has won a true road game at a Pac-12 school.
Wow.
And that is something that Big Ten and Pac-12 fans know, that when they you as a Big Ten fan, you are always leery when your school goes out and plays at the Pac-12 school, because it's just harder. It is, and this is why this is such a big huge statement game for the Spartans, because it's an opportunity to go to a place where Washington is favored. That caught my attention. Don't know about you, like 4-point favorite. Yeah, that's got my attention because Washington is unproven. New coach, transfer quarterback, hasn't played anybody. And Michigan State, I think, is a known commodity with Mel a little bit. So this will go into the whole Mel Tucker toughness thing. They did win at Miami last year. And if they can go out to Washington and win, that would tell me that they're at least a top 10 team, at least, and maybe even serious about competing for something more.
Yeah, they've getting, they had to replace Kenneth Walker the third. Jalen Berger's averaging 114 yards on the ground. That was a question. They had the transfer from Colorado as well in the backfield. And, they've only played two MAC teams thus far, but their quarterback's experienced. I covered them in the Chick-fil-A Bowl last year. They look good. Like they had a lot of guys back. I don't know. I'm really surprised that Washington is favored.
Yeah, I like Michigan State in this game. I do. I think it's not going to be easy, but I think the defense gets after Penix a little bit, and I think that two-headed running game, the one thing they've got to avoid is Peyton Thorne was a little loose with the football last week, And if that happens in a road environment like Washington, I mean, saw it in the NFL last night, right? Or Monday night, I'm sorry. Denver stepped into it in Seattle with Russell. I mean, when that crowd out there, it's for whatever reason, it's a tough place to play. So, and it translates to college too. So fun game, but I picked the Spartans to win. I first win out there since 57 or whatever, but they're going to have to, this is a spotlight game to me for Michael Penix because he's been in and out of the limelight. And in the COVID year, he was definitely in the limelight. If he has a big game, the Huskies, I mean, that's just even better for the Pac-12. For the second straight week, they could have a school in the spotlight win big.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm happy for him. He's been injured so much and everything, and it's good to see him off to a good start out at Washington. Some other interesting notes from the Week 3 slate. I don't know if you noticed, but 3 teams have a chance to match or exceed their over-under win total for the season. Duke, Kansas, and Vanderbilt. Duke can match their over-under at 3, and Kansas was 2.5. They're going for their third win. They're going to be at Houston. Vanderbilt going for their third win. Their over-under was 2.5. They're at Northern Illinois. Vanderbilt is like a 2-point dog at Northern Illinois, and I think Duke plays NC A&T, which they will be heavily favored to win that game. What about Mike Elko at Duke? What do you think?
Riley Leonard. I mean, great job so far. A surprising result last weekend. I mean, but this is as far as first-year coach grades go, he's definitely on fire. I mean, North Carolina is a place to be. I think Andrea Adelson tweeted this stat. I mean, it's first time in like forever that Duke, NC State, Wake, and North Carolina are all 2-0. I mean, clearly a football state there.
That's right.
So it's cool to see. So very good for Duke and very good for Kansas. I mean, beating West Virginia, Lance Leopold, we talked about it on yesterday's show about how he was a candidate maybe for Nebraska. And it's just, what world are we living in where Kansas's coach is the candidate to maybe be the right fit to be Nebraska's head coach? I don't know. It's definitely not the world I grew up in.
And could they convince him to come?
Yeah, can they sell him on that?
Another interesting note, Bobby Petrino returns to Arkansas as the head coach of Missouri State in the FCS 10 years after he was unceremoniously fired following a scandal, lying about an affair with a woman who he hired within the athletic department. That was one of several inglorious exits Petrino has made in his career. But as you and I were talking about, the guy can coach. He's got a team that was 1-10 when he was hired. They've a couple years ago, they are now ranked number 5 in the latest FCS poll, 2-0 this year, 8-4 last year. The guy knows his ball.
Yeah, there's a picture of him on in the neck brace on the internet. If you haven't seen it, everybody's seen it. And
everybody's seen it.
I think it's just such the wrong image of him. It's actually, if there's an image of him, it's like drawing up an offensive play. Ryan Mallett took them to a Sugar Bowl. He had Darren McFadden. They had exciting teams. Well, he may have not had Darren McFadden. Might have been Houston Nutt. But anyway, they were good teams at Arkansas. They were good teams at Louisville, and he can clearly coach. Personality is what it is with him, and maybe that's obviously gotten him into some trouble and some stops. But I think he may get a warmer than expected reception at Arkansas. At least he should, because they were a pretty good team when he was there.
I think I read he went back in 2019 to the Arkansas Touchdown Club and was a speaker and apologized for all his misdeeds and things like that. So yeah, he might get a warmer welcome than people might expect. We shall see. Also the 15th anniversary of ULM visiting Alabama. ULM comes back 15 years after beating Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide 21-14. And Nick had this unfortunate quote after the game. I don't know if you remember, but he said, let me read it to you. Changes in history usually occur after some kind of catastrophic event. It may be 9/11, which sort of changed the spirit of America relative to a catastrophic event. Pearl Harbor got us ready for World War II or whatever. And that was a catastrophic event. And I don't think anyone in this room would have bet that we could lose back-to-back games to Mississippi State or ULM. No disrespect to either one of those teams. That quote got Mr. Saban in a little hot water, but I think he's made amends since.
Yeah, he has. And foreshadowing in a certain way. I mean, they've been the best dynasty ever since, like in a lot of ways since that season. They're going to crush them. And I think they're going to definitely beat them given how close last week was. I think this will look a lot like the Utah State game did, where business in and out. Bryce Young has a huge first half. I would take the points. I would take Alabama in the 49 because I think they're going to come out and just blow them out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Alabama players are going to be so glad to hear that whistle for the start of the game. They know they don't have to practice anymore after last week's sort of subpar performance at Texas. Just sloppiness. I mean, give Texas credit, but just the sloppiness on Alabama is something that Saban is, I'm guessing they had a brutal week of practice in Tuscaloosa. All right. So let's get to our confidence contest. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you a trivia question, Bill. All right. Like I do every week. I don't want you to answer it till the end of the show, but I want you to mull it over. It has to do with the guy who is in the news this week, Mr. Scott Frost.
Oh, no.
When Scott Frost went 13-0, remember those days? Scott Frost went 13-0 at UCF. Who did he beat in the bowl game? Don't answer. Just think about that. All right. Who did Scott Frost beat in 2017 when UCF won their national championship? Not the national championship, but their national championship. Who did they beat in the bowl game? All right, let's go to the confidence contest. Last week you had a big lead. I trimmed it a little bit. The way the contest works is it's a bowl-style confidence pool. We pick 4 games a week. Any game we want against the spread. It's 4 points, 3 points, 2 points, 1 point as far as confidence goes. If you get the one, you get as many points as you assign if you get that game right. We both went 1-3 last week against the spread. That's not good. But I hit my 4-pointer, which was Washington State at Wisconsin. Not only did they cover easily, they actually won the game. You hit your 1-pointer, Bill. Hawaii plus 51. They needed almost all 51, but
it was close.
It was close. You called it. You got it.
Yeah, and here's another thing. So we do the weekly picks against the spread at Sporting News. Here's an interesting stat for you. I was 6-10 last week, 6-10-1, which isn't great. I was 0-3 in overtime. Games that I had the cover. So like if BYU makes the field goal in regulation, I get that cover. If Tennessee just closes Pitt out, got that cover. If Houston beats Texas Tech and even just kicks a field goal, I was 0-3 in OT this weekend, which drove me crazy because that's the difference between like 6-10 and 6-7 isn't too bad. So hopefully doing better this week. And you had one of those heartbreaks last week as well.
Yeah, I lost North Carolina by 0.5 point, Army by 1 point. And yeah, by the way, that Texas Tech game, Texas Tech had to convert a 4th and 20.
Right.
To keep that game alive. And then they ended up winning and covering. So scoreboard for the season, Bender, 10 points, Trocchi, 6 points as we go. Since I won last week, I will pick first. I will give my picks first. I'll do my 4-pointer, your 4-pointer, 3, 2, 1. We'll go down the list. My 4-pointer, BYU getting 3.5 at Oregon. I watched that, like you said, that Baylor BYU game. That was a hard-fought game. They got great offensive line, defensive line. It's a mature team. Jalen Hall is a great quarterback. Oregon, we don't know what we're going to see. But I can't get that Georgia game out of my head. That was not pretty. BYU getting 3.5 on the road. I think that's my 4-pointer. I feel good about that one.
That's a good one. I'm taking a risk here with my 4-pointer.
A risk at 4. Okay, let's see it.
I do because I want the team to prove it. I want Penn State to go down and prove it and win by 3 at Auburn. And I think Penn State's got some good pieces. I do. I like Nick Singleton at running back. I like tight end. I'm not as high on TJ Finley at quarterback for Auburn. I want to see Penn State prove it, go down to an SEC school, win on the road with Sean Clifford or Drew Allar. I don't care who the quarterback is. I want to see him go down and do it. And I think they're the better team. They were a better team last year, even with some really bad officiating mixed in. But I'm going to go Penn State -3, and that'll be my 4 this week. Yeah.
They should have lost to Purdue, by the way. Just so you know, they should have lost to Purdue. Okay. Anyway, my 3-pointer. This is sort of a cliche pick, but I'm taking Nevada +23 at Iowa. And
I knew you were going to do that this morning. When you mentioned it in our meeting this morning, I'm like, well, there's one of his picks.
You could tell, right?
Right.
Is Iowa going to score 23 points? And
this season?
You know, in this game, all I need is for them to not score 23 in this game. I mean, I've watched a lot of both of their games, as a matter of fact, and it's not getting better. And they haven't switched quarterbacks. Did you see the Brian Ferentz thing, by the way, that was floating around?
It's messy. It was messy. They were asking Brian Ferentz questions at Big Ten Media Day. It's not good.
It's not good.
No.
That's a lot to add. I mean, if Nevada scores even one touchdown, we're talking 30 points for Iowa. Are they going to score 30 points in a game? They'd need 31 points if Nevada scores one touchdown.
I think their max point total in a game is like 38. Like max, like everything goes right. Like they're not hitting 40. So you might be in pretty good shape there.
I think so. So that's my 3-pointer. Nevada's getting 23 at one of the worst offenses in the country.
I'm going to go USC -12.5. I'm going to keep riding this Lincoln Riley machine. Fresno State's a good team, but they're coming off a heartbreaker. USC will score 40 points in every game this year. Probably. They're capable of doing that. And they've bowled through 2 spreads the first 2 weeks. I like teams that are, they're not going to cover every game, but I just think the fact that I talk a lot about this yards per play statistic, but Caleb Williams leads the country with 10.3 yards per play of total offense, like between the run and the pass. Like they are explosive. They've got great receivers. Their defense, as you pointed out to me last Saturday when we were watching, a couple red zone turnovers bailed them out a little bit. But if it was 14, I'd be leery of it. But because it's 12.5, I think the Trojans can cover that and keep it rolling.
Yeah, Jordan Addison's touchdown, that 75-yarder where he spun after he caught the ball and covered the last 20 yards. And then they cut to the sideline. They showed Jerry Rice, and because Rice's son is on USC, and he was just kind of nodding his head. It was just like, it was a really cool moment, really cool thing to see. My 2-pointer, you know where I'm going with this. Vanderbilt +2.5 at Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois won the MAC last year. So they're
Thomas
not a pushover. Rocky Lombardi, right, is their quarterback.
They run the football.
But, I like what I've seen so far out of Vanderbilt. This is, probably almost definitely. Actually, they're not even favored. I was going to say the last game they're going to be favored. This will be their most competitive game the rest of the season. I know they want that third win. They lost 45-25 last week to Wake Forest. There were some encouraging signs in that game. Wake Forest is very good. Sam Hartman was back, and the fact that they scored 25 in that one made me feel like they can score at a reasonable rate. They put up big numbers against inferior opponents the first 2 weeks. The 25 against Wake Forest made me feel okay. I'm going with the alma mater right here, Vanderbilt +2.5 at Northern Illinois.
Are they going to a bowl game?
Northern Illinois?
No, Vanderbilt.
No. This year? No.
No, you're not going to get to 6. They're not going to get to 6. Okay. The bottom of the SEC East, there's a win in there too. The answer is always yes with your alma mater. Yeah.
Is Ohio going to a bowl game this year?
I don't know. Maybe. No. Maybe. I mean, it's the MAC East. Anything can happen. Oklahoma, 11.5. I said, in our show yesterday, I thought that they were going to stomp Nebraska, or maybe not stomp, but I just think it's too much. You're asking Nebraska. It's going to go one of two ways, right? These college kids are either going to be super hyper focused in front of the home crowd. Hey, Frost is out, the pressure's off, or the emotion of that. And I just go back to Big Ten Media Day. A lot of these players were saying how much they love Frost. And were they lying? Or were they told to lie? No. I mean, and I think Oklahoma coming in there, this was a close game last year, but I think Oklahoma made it close by turning the ball over and making a lot of bad mistakes. I like their efficiency with Dylan Gabriel. I like their guys on the outside. 11.5 to me is it's either going to be a really tight game or Oklahoma is going to crush them. I don't think if Nebraska crushes Oklahoma Saturday, I'll just message you. We can do a Twitter Spaces on that because I'll be very shocked if it happens.
No question. No question. All right. 1 pointer. I am going with Kansas State, who looked very good last week, beating Missouri 40-12. They are 14.5-point favorites against Tulane. 14.5. Deuce Vaughn, love him. 145 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. Adrian Martinez is not putting up big numbers throwing, but he's not putting up big interception numbers either. He had that problem a little bit at Nebraska. Martinez ran for 52 yards last week. I think they're very well coached. I think they're ready to Tulane is 2-0. But I like Kansas State, and they're getting some buzz as a team that's going to be a threat in the Big 12 moving forward, especially when Texas and Oklahoma leave. And I think they can take Tulane and win by 3 touchdowns.
Cool. Yeah, and my 1 pointer is a hard one, but I'm intrigued by this game. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a pick just so I have to have
Talk
some
about
investment. Other than a Purdue and Syracuse game.
Fun pick. I took that one off my list. Actually, I had it originally.
Who did you pick?
Purdue.
So did I. So I'm picking Purdue with my 1, and it was a tough pick because
it's an even spread, right? Even.
It's not a Sweet 16 basketball game either. This is a football game and even spread. So it's a pick 'em. I'm going with Purdue on the road. Tricky game though, because Syracuse is balling. Their offense looks pretty good. They're scoring a bunch of points. I think Purdue can go in there with their offense. This could be one of those really fun games that, Twitter likes to say this game's drunk or this game's off the rails or whatever the new saying next week will be about what is cool. But yeah, I think this is going to be a game that has a lot of points. I got Purdue winning. So I think it's worth a 1 just to have some fun. I should get a bonus point if I'm like, is there going to be more than 110 points in this game or something? Because I think they're going to both teams will go in the 40s maybe. It could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I like Purdue, better quarterback. And, Syracuse, I don't trust them. They beat Louisville. They look good against Louisville. Dino Babers has had 1 good season so far. I'm still not convinced that they are ready to have another 8, 9, 10 win season like they did a couple years ago under Dino. But who knows? I mean, we'll see. All right, trivia answer, Bill. Scott Frost, 13-0. Who did UCF beat in the bowl game?
Well, I mean, they beat Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
In the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and that was I believe Auburn beat Alabama, right? So that's why this whole claiming a national championship thing happened, because they beat them. And, we have Zach Al-Khatib, who works for us at Sporting News, is an Alabama grad. And all you have to do is say UCF and he gets mad. It's amazing. And I remember at the time I was just like, yeah, that UCF matches up well in the secondary. He'd lose his mind. And I'd just do it to mess with him. And, no, but yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, and I won't go on too long about it, but I do believe there's something to be said about having the pressure of coaching at your alma mater because you care so much. Because Scott Frost didn't get stupid. I mean, he lost a lot of 1-score games. He was very good at Central Florida. He's a very good offensive coordinator at Oregon. And I think he could be a very good coach somewhere else. But just sometimes the pressure of being at your alma mater and everybody, myself included, thought, oh, yeah, it's game changer. because we just watched him go 13-0. So I hope that he catches on somewhere else. Like to me, I made the example, like in a couple years, it wouldn't surprise me if he like went to like UCLA or something and was awesome because the pressure's off. So, I hope he
needs to go to the Nick Saban Rehab Center before
he'll go as an analyst.
Yep,
like, that's a good
analyst.
Can we get a bonus point on that? Will Scott Frost be an analyst at Alabama next year? True or false?
True. Someone wrote about it, the 2017 coaching cycle where Chip Kelly, Jimbo Fisher, and Scott Frost all look like home run. And
right.
We have not had a home run quite yet with all three of them to differing degrees. The two quarterbacks in that Peach Bowl, last thing before we go, extra trivia.
Mackenzie Milton. Jarrett Stidham?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, there you go.
Bill Bender.
Had to think for a second.
I need to go next level. And wow, you're going to get a tough one next week, boy. That was terrific.
Yeah, Milton he had the next year he got hurt. He got hurt the next year, and then Auburn. I remember writing some Jarrett Stidham takes that didn't come true. I would just put it that way. So, but that's Auburn.
Well, good for you. On fire with the trivia. Hopefully you're not on fire with your confidence picks as I come from behind here. That's all for today's show. Thank you, everybody, for joining CFB Nation All-America podcast. Again, Bill Trocchi, Bill Bender from sportingnews.com. We will see you at possibly a Twitter Spaces this weekend. We'll definitely see you for a podcast next Wednesday morning and next Thursday morning. Thank you all for joining us and enjoy the weekend.